They say when twins are born under a blood moon, only one survives whole. The other is cursed to wander the shadows, wearing a face that doesn't belong to her. Hazel Monroe always believed she was an only child, until the mirror blinked first. Now whispers haunt the woods, her name appears in ink she never wrote, and someone with her face walks beneath the trees. As the veil between worlds thins and old witch blood awakens in her veins, Hazel must uncover the truth of her birth, before her twin reclaims the life that was never hers to begin with. Hello family, welcome to Storytime with Imzi. Please subscribe and like, it means the world to us. Also share this video to your friends and loved ones and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you as you do so. Sit back and relax as we dive into the story. The fog curled low over elders more like a sleeping beast, thick and pale, swallowing sound and smell until only the wet crunch of Hazel's boots against the mossy path remained. Her cloak clung damply to her shoulders, scented with crushed lavender and wood smoke. She clutched a basket of dried wolfsbane, her fingers stiff from the cold. Above her, the sky hung swollen with clouds, the color of old parchment. The village's lanterns flickered dim behind shuttered windows, wary always of twilight. The woods had been restless for weeks. Branches broke with no wind. Birds sang in reverse. Maeve said it was nothing, just the turning of the season, but Hazel knew better. Something was coiling in the air like a spell waiting to be spoken. As she reached the weathered door of the herb cottage, the wind shifted, and the scent of burnt myrrh cut through the usual dampness. She paused. That smell didn't belong here. A flutter of black caught her eye. A raven, enormous and glossy, perched atop the garden gate. It cocked its head, eyes like beads of polished coal, and held something in its beak. A scroll, bound in blood-red ribbon and sealed with wax. Not village wax, which bore the mark of the Grove Council. This seal was unfamiliar, a symbol she didn't recognize, a handprint made of thorns. The bird cawed once, dropped the letter at her feet, and took flight with a furious beat of wings, vanishing into the fog. Hazel stared at the scroll for a long while before picking it up. The parchment pulsed with a strange warmth. When she touched the seal, the wax cracked with a hiss and melted into her palm like snow. Inside, in an inky black script too elegant to be from any local hand, 5 words stretched across the page. I know who you are. The words shifted faintly as if breathing. For a heartbeat, she thought she saw her name ghosted beneath them. Hazel Nova Monroe. But when she blinked, the page was blank. Behind her, every candle inside the cottage extinguished at once. The following morning dawned pale and damp, the sky choked with sullen clouds that clung low like thoughts unspoken. Hazel rose before the bell tolled first light, her sleep fractured and brittle, dreams vanishing the moment she opened her eyes, except for one, a mirror that didn't reflect her face. She tried to tell Maeve about the raven, about the letter, but the words snagged on her tongue. Something about it felt watched, as if saying it aloud would give it roots. Maeve brewed dandelion tea with ash bark, humming low under her breath, a tune older than the cottage. She waved off Hazel's unease with a flick of her hand. There are always tricks in the fog, girl. Don't let the woods in your head. But Hazel wasn't imagining the pull. By midday, she escaped to the river's edge, where the moorland trees thinned and the black waters of the Glassmere curled past mossy stones. She went there often to think, to collect herbs, to be alone with things she couldn't name. The sky broke into fine mist, trailing down her cheeks like lace. She knelt by the water to rinse her hands, still stained from pressing elder root into poultices. The surface shimmered, then stilled. And there she was. Not herself. Her reflection. But not hers. The face in the water bore her features, yes. Same honey-dark hair, same wide-set eyes, same birthmark near the left collarbone. But it didn't move as she did. Its mouth curved ever so slightly when hers remained still. Its eyes glinted with something unfamiliar, something feral. Hazel leaned closer. The reflection blinked. She didn't. A violent ripple cracked the surface, and she recoiled, heart thudding like a struck drum. The reflection was gone, just the churned water remaining. Hazel scrambled back, the hem of her skirt soaked, breath shallow. She spun around. The woods loomed, still silent, too silent. Somewhere, something whispered her name through leaves that hadn't moved. That night, she burned the letter in the hearth. The flames turned blue, then green, then died with a sharp crack that sent sparks spiraling up the flue. When she swept the ashes away, the words were still there, faintly scorched into the stone beneath. I know who you are. Hazel waited until Maeve fell into her usual wine-heavy sleep, soft snores drifting from behind the curtain that divided their cottage. The hearth had burned low, casting more shadow than warmth. Outside, the wind clawed at the shutters like a beggar asking to be let in. She lit a single beeswax candle and crept into the attic. It wasn't truly hers to enter. The narrow stair groaned beneath her weight, warned her, perhaps. But the unease had grown too sharp to ignore. That face in the river. The letter. The reflection that moved on its own. She needed answers, not more silences. The attic air was dry and strange, heavy with the scent of old cloves and camphor. Dust spiraled through the candlelight like spirits caught mid-sentence. Boxes lined the eaves, untouched in years, their edges worn and labels faded. Hazel followed her instinct, not reason. Near the far wall, beneath an old velvet sheet, she found a trunk made of blackened pine, its corners etched with carvings. Symbols she almost recognized. The lock gave way too easily. Inside, she found yellowed linens, a silver comb, and beneath them a bundle of papers bound in dark twine. Birth records. One sheet in particular stopped her breath. Monroe, Hazel Nova and Monroe, Nova Hazel. Twins born under the blood moon, 6th night of frostfall. Mother, Elira Monroe. The ink shivered. Literally shivered. She touched the names, Nova Hazel and Hazel Nova. Twin halves of the same circle, never spoken aloud. Something twisted inside her chest, a quiet unraveling. A second name. A twin. The candle hissed. The flame bent sideways as if recoiling. Something in the dark attic exhaled, not wind, not floorboards, but breath. Real breath. Behind her, the mirror hanging from the rafter creaked on its old chain. She hadn't seen it before, round and cloudy, veined with frost and shadow. She turned to face it, and there she was. Hazel. And standing behind her, just beyond reach, Nova. Same face. Same eyes. But hers glinted red like old iron. Hazel spun around. The attic was empty. When she looked back, the mirror was cracked straight through the middle. The crack had started at her reflection's heart. The village bells tolled noon the following day, but no birds called back. Eldersmore had gone still, unnaturally so. Hazel walked the cobbled paths and saw shutters drawn tight even in daylight. Mothers clutched their children's hands with pale fingers. A cow was born with no eyes. A stone well collapsed into itself. The air smelled faintly of burnt sugar, a sure sign of hexing. They didn't say it aloud, but Hazel saw it in their eyes. They were starting to fear her. She returned home with her hood drawn low and found Maeve already waiting at the hearth, a bowl of soot in her lap, bones scattered on a cloth. The signs had told her something, too. Maeve said little now, just stared hard at Hazel with eyes that saw more than anyone wanted them to. "There's someone walking in your skin," the old woman murmured, voice like scraped bark. "But it ain't you." Hazel didn't answer. She couldn't. Her tongue felt borrowed. That night, sleep came in fits. She heard footsteps above her bed, pacing the beams. Once, she rose and looked through the attic hatch. Nothing. But the mirror was no longer cracked. It was missing. At dawn, she set out for the ruins. Black Hollow Manor, what little remained of it, lay swallowed by the forest's edge. Twisted stone and ivy, moss-grown walls, half a tower. The wind refused to blow here. Birds refused to perch. She hadn't returned since she was a child. When Maeve had found her near the outer gates, wrapped in birchroot and crying, no twin in sight. And now she knew why. The gates creaked open at her touch, though no one had oiled them in years. Inside the shattered manor, the hearth was cold, but faint footprints, bare and strangely small, led across the soot. A trail of crimson thread snaked through the dust, ending at a mirror leaning against the broken mantel. It was her mirror. Hazel stepped toward it, but her reflection did not mimic her movement. Nova was standing on the other side. Her twin wore a gown of thorns and ash, and eyes like hollow moons. Her lips parted in a smile Hazel hadn't worn in years. "You forgot me," Nova said from the other side of the glass. Her voice was soft, musical. "Rotten. I didn't know you," Hazel whispered. "That's not the same thing." The mirror rippled like water, and Nova reached out, not with her hand, but her shadow. It licked across the ground like a smoke serpent and curled around Hazel's foot, cold and ancient. You took the name. You took the light. You took everything. But it's all right, Nova cooed. I'm taking it back. Hazel turned and ran, the shadow clawing after her across stone. Behind her, the broken manor came alive with wind and whispers. And deep in the woods, someone began to hum her lullaby. Rain had begun to fall in long, whispering lines by the time Hazel returned to the cottage. Her cloak clung heavy to her skin, but she didn't feel the cold. Not truly. Not when the sound of Nova's voice still echoed in her bones. Maeve was gone. The hearth was dark, and the herbs she'd hung that morning had withered to black. Something had entered their home. Or someone. On the table sat a single object, a dried crow's foot tied with red twine. A warning in the old tongue. One Hazel had only seen in Maeve's grimoires. One that meant, turn back or be unmade. Hazel did not turn back. Instead, she pried up the loose floorboard beneath Maeve's sleeping cot, the one Maeve had once told her never to touch. There, wrapped in wax cloth and cedar bark, lay a book bound in wolf hide and iron thread. It throbbed faintly, as if it held a pulse of its own. The Monroe grimoire. Her mother's true inheritance. It smelled of smoke and rue trot, the pages filled with sigils that shimmered when looked at too long. Some spells were warding glyphs, others curses that curdled milk and memory alike. Hazel turned page after trembling page until she found what she sought. Of twins born under the blood moon. The ink was darker here. Almost red. When twins are born beneath the blood moon's gaze, their souls are one. Not two. Not half. One. Divided by flesh, bound by breath. If severed by spell or death, the surviving twin becomes a mirror incomplete. The soul split will crave its other half until the end of time, or until it is made whole again through blood binding or sacrifice. Hazel felt sick. Her vision swam. She gripped the edge of the hearth to steady herself. Nova wasn't haunting her. Nova wasn't just angry. Nova was broken, and the only way she believed she could be whole again was to reclaim Hazel's half of the soul. Through blood magic. Through death. Beneath the entry, scrawled in a different, sharper hand, were 6 words. She was born first. Let her die. Hazel slammed the book shut, heart thudding like a war drum. But even then, behind her, she felt the air shift. The attic door creaked open. Slowly, deliberately. She turned, knowing what she would see. Nova, standing in the threshold, half shadow, half girl, her smile wide and glassy. Mother left it for both of us, she said softly. You just found it first. Hazel reached for the grimoire with shaking hands. Nova was already gone, but her voice lingered behind like breath in the dark. Meet me where it all began. Hazel followed Nova's voice deep into the woods, past the morning trees and frost-kissed moss. The sky hung gray and swollen above her, but it no longer mattered. Something colder than rain had already soaked through her bones. She walked without truly knowing the path. The forest knew it for her. It led her through places no villager dared tread. Across the hollow bridge where whispers replaced wind, through the thorn henge that bled red sap, and finally to the place of her earliest memory, the ruined chapel of Black Hollow, where stone angels wept with eroded faces and crows circled like black threads in the sky. Nova was waiting inside. The once sacred hall had been transformed. Mirrors lined every wall, floor to ceiling, some tall as trees, others cracked and crooked, all pulsing faintly with silvery light. Hazel saw 100 reflections of herself, but none moved as she did. Some smiled. Some wept. One covered her ears and screamed. In the center of the room stood Nova, robed in twilight and thorn lace, her eyes gleaming with a hunger older than grief. I used to dream about you, she whispered. Sitting by a fire that should have been mine. Holding the hands that should have held me. Hazel stepped forward, keeping her voice steady. You don't have to do this. I already have, Nova said. And the mirrors shuddered. Hazel felt her pulse stutter as the world warped. The air thickened like syrup, and in a blink, she was no longer standing in the chapel. She was inside a mirror. The silver glass realm. Time cracked apart like thin ice. The world here was not quite real, a twisted echo of Elder's Moor. Trees shimmered with frost in midsummer bloom. The sun blinked like an eye. The ground whispered her name with every step. Hazel wandered streets she knew, but all the doors led to empty rooms filled with nothing but reflections of herself, each more withered, more lost, more hollow. She screamed. No one answered. Then a voice. Familiar. Lo. Lupin. Not all who enter the glass are lost, child. A figure emerged, an enormous gray wolf, its eyes wise and weary, a silver chain wound around its neck like a collar. It bowed its head to her. I was your mother's familiar, it said, before her grief fed the dark. Hazel dropped to her knees. Help me. I don't know how to fight her here. She made this place, but she is not its god. The wolf padded forward. You share her blood, but your soul is your own. That is your weapon. You must reclaim it, or she will wear your life like a skin. Hazel pressed her hand to her chest. Her heartbeat echoed through the mirrored world like a bell. And slowly, she began to remember who she was. A healer. A twin. A witch born of blood, yes, but also of balance. She whispered the first true spell she'd ever spoken without reading it from a page. Old words. Bone-deep words. I name myself whole. The mirror walls cracked. In the real world, Nova staggered back, blood dripping from her nose. Hazel was coming home. The first thing Hazel felt as she crossed back into the waking world was fire. Heat kissed her skin like a warning. The ruined chapel groaned with flame. Nova's fury had bloomed into wildfire, licking up the old stone and catching on the vines that had crept in over decades. Mirrors cracked one by one, their surfaces boiling silver. In the center, Nova screamed, not in pain but in rage. You stole it, she shrieked, her voice splitting like lightning. The name, the soul, the warmth. You took it all. Hazel rose from the shattered mirror, smoke swirling around her. Her cloak burned at the edges, but she stood tall. In her hand, the Monroe grimoire, scorched but intact. On her shoulder, the silver-eyed wolf, now spirit, no longer bound to flesh, stood watch. I didn't steal it, Hazel said. We were both children. We were broken by someone else's hand. Nova's eyes glinted. Don't give me pity. I was left to rot in a cradle of ash while you learned lullabies and healing spells. I didn't even know you existed, Hazel said, voice steady, though tears ran clean lines down her soot-covered face. But I know you now. Nova lifted her arms, and from the last unbroken mirror burst a cyclone of shadow. Her soul magic, raw and writhing, made of hunger and grief. It tore at the chapel walls. Stone screamed. Mirrors shattered inward. Then die knowing it, Nova spat. Hazel stood her ground and whispered words from the grimoire, not in defiance, but in binding. Her own magic rose, not cold and dark like Nova's, but warm, green with root and rain and memory. She called not just to her own strength, but to the bond between them. The bond Nova sought to destroy, but could never unmake. You're not whole, Hazel whispered, because you forgot what it means to be two. Their magic collided. Light against shadow. Fire against water. One born of rage, the other of resolve. And for a moment, time stopped. The wolf howled. The mirrors all shattered at once. And Nova fell. When the dust settled, the chapel was gone, reduced to stone and embers. Hazel knelt beside her sister, who lay still but breathing, hair fanned out like black ink in the ash. For the first time, Nova looked small. Mortal. Human. Hazel took her hand. And though Nova flinched, she didn't pull away. They found her days later, wandering the edge of Elder's Moor, barefoot and dazed. Her cloak was tattered, her skin marked by ash and spell burn. In her hand, she clutched a sliver of black mirror. I am Hazel Monroe, she said when the Grove Council questioned her. I stopped the curse. It's over now. They didn't press further. Maeve did not return. The cottage was quiet, and the wind no longer whispered names. The wolf's spirit had faded into mist. And Nova, there was no sign of her body among the ruins. No footprints. No blood. Just the faint smell of myrrh. Hazel resumed her work as an herbalist, but the villagers watched her with quiet awe. Children no longer picked flowers near the forest's edge. People offered her things they hadn't before. Silence, space, and once, a silver coin marked with a crescent moon. The symbol of a witch untouched by judgment. She never spoke of what truly happened in Black Hollow. But she remembered everything. At night, she sometimes dreamed of mirrors. Not breaking. Breathing. Sometimes she'd wake with her hand pressed to the glass on her windowpane, her breath fogging the surface. And just once, she thought she saw someone staring back, a face like hers but older. Softer. Sadder. Nova. Not reaching for her this time. Just watching. And in that moment, Hazel did not feel fear. Only the pull of a bond still tethered by blood, memory, and the echo of a soul split long ago. She turned away. And in the mirror behind her, the reflection smiled first.